various scientists from around the world. I was in Italy a few weeks ago at a Breatharian conference, actually. My first Breatharian conference ever. It's the first time I actually publicly talk about my time as a Breatharian. I was very much a Breatharian for almost 3 years, when I was in my van doing a lot of studying in 1994. I actually just found a letter that I wrote up to my father. I didn't write many letters during those 5 years in the van, just a few. And one of them was to my father, and I was describing, I didn't say I stopped eating because I think he would have panicked, but I described reducing the amount of food dramatically. It happened naturally for me, and I was really excited. It happened naturally because I had low resources, and most of my money had to go to the van, not to food. But as well, it was such a high powered time for me, and it was really great to go to one of those conferences and meet some of those Breatharians. There was at least 6 people there that had stopped eating for over 20 years. Some of them had stopped drinking completely, as I did. At the end of my 3 years, I almost didn't drink any water at all. So these people are physical evidence of free energy, of extracting energy directly from the vacuum. And it was really good to connect with that community, which was not present for me when I was in my time in 94. And to see the interest, I think on Yahoo News, interestingly, just a few days ago, there was an article about this Breatharian couple that was at the conference in Italy, which in both, in this case, I believe they're both Breatharians, and they actually went through a pregnancy while being Breatharians. So it's remarkable. This is physical evidence again of your physical capacity to tap into the vacuum. And I think in general you are, in any case, somewhat Breatharian. I mean, it's not obvious that the food we eat in a day has all of the energy required for all metabolic processes and carnal engine requirements to keep your body at temperature and so on. And so I actually believe that we are already Breatharians to a certain degree, and we supplement with food. And remember that when we eat food, we're eating protons and neutrons and electrons and stuff. And my equations show that this is made directly out of the vacuum. So we're extracting energy from the vacuum anyway. It's just the method in which we're extracting it can bypass the atomic structure, and these people are physical evidence of that. So it was really exciting. We went as well to Venice for business meetings that were very successful, and then back to the grind here in the lab to get the job done and get everybody ramped up and ready for October, which is going to be fantastic.
Yeah, I tell you, the more I see the lineup of what you're planning for that October event, it is really the trip of a lifetime. I mean, I don't know that they'll ever let us do what we're doing again. Hey Nassim, I'm so inspired that you got to be around people that are having and have had a similar experience as you did when you were in the van, and you were really opening up to this knowledge, and that must have been so just, I don't know, nourishing for you. I'm really glad that you had that opportunity and that you could share that with us. And you look awesome. And here we go. You're going to get nourished too by being with the community, which you love, answering questions and sharing with this incredible global family that we have. So why don't we get going? Marshall, I'm going to start with you. I bet you got a good question in there.
There's a bunch of good questions. Very, very physics oriented today, for sure.
Right.
Quick comment though. I was thinking about just the whole breatharian thing and about the access of energy from the vacuum of space. And I was thinking about little children who really don't eat all that much food. You know, when you think about maybe what amount they eat in a day relative to the energy that they're expending and their body's growing, it just makes it obvious there has to be another source than just the calories and the nutrients in the food that they're eating. It's like there's no other way for that to be possible when you think about it. So, yeah. Anyway, that really struck me.
No doubt.
As proof, basically.
Yeah. And certainly when people are spending 20 years without eating or drinking in some cases, it really strikes you that, of course, you can extract, but as well, you're extracting energy from the vacuum, but what's remarkable as well is that you're recycling nutrients. You're recycling, fluids. For instance, in one case, is a sadhu man, in, India that got checked into an hospital for observation for 45 days to ensure that he wasn't eating or drinking anything. He was monitored 24 hours a day and so on. And and there was, ultrasound data that was taken of his bladder, for instance, because the man doesn't drink, and you could see the bladder emptying, the fluids being absorbed into the body and then refilling and then reabsorbed and then refilling. And so basically you're recycling, everything in your body, so that, the feedback of the recycling of the information in the body interacting with the vacuum, with, what breatharians call the prana field or the pranic field, which I believe is the structure of the vacuum. Mm-hmm. This interaction, actually, this dynamic, this feedback dynamic actually is driving an energy carnal engine that you call your body, and keeping it at temperature and functioning perfectly well and so on without any physical input.
It makes me wonder if the name given to that breatharian is encompassing enough of what's actually occurring. It's not just the breath and the intake and of the prana from breathing. And it also occurred to me that, sorry for my phone background, it's going to ring in the background here, but it occurred to me that the protons, which are not known to ever decay, are actually constantly feeding in energy forever. Mm-hmm. It's more about direct access at that level with the vacuum. That's
right.
Coming through.
That's right. And so breatharian is kind of not the appropriate terminology for what is really happening. It's not like you're living on breath. It's not like you're living on air. But you are living on a universal breath of confusing for people. Mm-hmm. The breath has something to do with it, learning to become aware of your breath and meditation techniques. For me, it was important when I was a breatharian. It's from meditation techniques that I became a breatharian. In fact, from a very specific yogic technique of the tongue, in the palate that generates a very specific drop of fluid that's called nectar. Since then I've been trying to identify where that nectar comes from.
Mm.
Might be from the pineal gland, and it might drop into the sinus cavity and drop into your false pana eventually. But every one of those drops, I would get about a drop a day. It would just fill me. I even gained 3 pounds during those 3 years. So, and I was climbing every day, every sunrise, every sunset. I was active, and I was studying as many as 20 to 22 hours a day. I was sleeping very little. And I was in the desert for most of that period. I was in a hot environment, and I was drinking for a long period of time, almost, very little water, and then eventually none at all. And so, it totally is remarkable, and it sounds really esoteric, but it actually is just the physics that we haven't understood, of the physics of the universe. I mean, the source of life, or even the source of the organization of cell division, is not understood in standard views of biology. How do cells know to divide? How do they know to divide in the correct organs, in the correct configuration? All that is completely unaddressed in current theory. It's assumed that it's all doing this in a random fashion, and random calculations don't add up to 100 trillion cells organizing into a body that's functioning with some few billion chemical changes every second to maintain coherency across all of the 100 trillion cells. And that, is completely unexplained in standard models. And what we're saying here is that there is a fundamental field that the body is interacting with. You can think of the body as a biocrystal oscillator, almost like a sync circuit in a radio set that's tuned to a very specific frequency of information that is in the field. And so, although we're talking about something really esoteric, and yes, it's esoteric, but it's verified because these people are doing it. What we're actually saying is that the material world is interacting with the field of information, and biological systems are an extension of that field of information, which your consciousness is evidence of, and that you can bypass the physical structure and actually have direct access to the field and nourish yourself from it. And your body will actually function just fine. During those 3 years, I was never hungry. I was always very energetic, and I was at an ideal weight. I didn't emaciate more. I was already very skinny, but I didn't lose more weight. In fact, I gained weight. So I was, and my state of awareness and sensitivity was just over the roof, over the top. My state of being able to interact with the environment around me. Even when I climb, I solo climbed at the time because I was by myself most of the time. So I didn't use ropes. So I was, in situation of high stress, thousands of feet up, sometimes on rock walls with no ropes, no safety, any error, and it was all over. And in the heat, in the sun, and all this, my body functioned perfectly. I didn't sweat, or if I did, I didn't notice it at all. The scent of my body even changed. It was remarkable.
Somebody was asking, in a few questions came in, with some of which you've kind of addressed, but one was related to the elimination of toxins from the environment. Obviously, if you're not bringing in food with different chemicals in it, you're not introducing it that way. And yet there is still that environmental impact in some areas, unless you're way out in the desert and you don't have that issue, generally speaking. But it seems to me that the body would basically kind of find this nice balance, this homeostasis that would not even really allow toxins to reside in there in the first place. Would that sound?
Well, you first of all, you know, the amount of energy that the body is saving by not having to break down the material that you put in your body every day. You know, so like all the digestive systems, all the energy that's required to absorb nutrients from the environment when we eat is automatically saved. But as well, if you can think as well, Teresa, you might want to put the camera back on me. If you put if you put it in the context of how much toxins are actually present in the food that we absorb, you know, in all of the things that we put in our body, all of a sudden the body is not having to deal with that anymore. The only the only things that come your way are toxins in the environment that you might inhale, you know, that you might get in contact with through your skin and so on. But my immune system during that time was so strong. I didn't get sick at all during those 3 years. I didn't catch colds. I didn't have any, energy lack or anything like that. I think your body becomes so self-generating in its own little shell. It becomes so strong. It's actually pretty hard for toxins to get in there. However, it's recycling cells and cells decay and waste from the cells and so on, and it literally is somewhat transmuting the information that's released by the cells into nutrients, because you, of course, no longer, there's no more excrement, there's no more, discharge of any fluids and so on. So you're actually transmuting or transforming waste into nourishment within your body in a continuous cycle. And that's how you see the bladder fill up, with urine and then reabsorb into the body as fluid and so on. So it's a remarkable thing. It become a closed loop. So there's much less danger of being exposed to toxins.
Yeah.
External toxins.
Yeah. Great. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let's move on to